Hey BookTube, this is Friday Reads. I'm Jen and I talk about audiobooks and a whole lot of romance to tell you about this week. I will start off with This Love by Dani Atkins. This is narrated on audio by Charlie Sanderson, who is a woman. This is set in the UK, so Charlie Sanderson is a British voice actor and she was great. Really, I have nothing really to say that was fabulous or terrible about her, which is always good because a narrator should just vanish into the backdrop. You should not even realize that you're listening to a book. It should be very seamless, and her performance in this really was. The book is about a woman who is in her early 30s and she's a translator. And so she stays home most of the time. She's had some stuff in her life that was, hard to get through. And one evening her apartment catches fire. And so nobody is able to hear her screaming. She can't get her windows open. I mean, it's like everybody's on the other side of the building. So she's panicking, as one would. And there finally is a man who drives by and she catches his eye and he says, "Break the window." And she says, "I can't, I don't have anything." And so they figure out a way to get her out of the building. And then they start a relationship more out of necessity than anything else because she has nowhere to go now. All her possessions are gone and everything's gone. So what's she gonna do? So he kind of tries to take care of her a little bit, and he has his issues, she has hers, and so it's how they work those out. It's really women's fiction, kind of little slice of life kind of thing. And to be honest, I found it largely unremarkable. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, I just thought it was okay. I don't know. I get to the end of these kinds of books sometimes and I think, was that a waste of time? There are better books out there. But, you do what you can. I don't know. You read what you do and then you kind of just evaluate and move on. So I did. Then I picked up a couple of old favorites that I knew I was going to love, and I just thought, I need some of that. Once in a while you need to reread something. So I picked up Suddenly Engaged. This is book 3 in the Lake Haven series by Julia London, who normally writes historical romance. It's narrated by Christina Panfilio. Now, I have raved and raved and raved about this particular book when I read it the first time. I raved, and then I've raved about it since. It may well be the best romance I've ever read. I don't know if it hit me at the right time or what, but it's perfect. It is perfect. 5-star read. Christina Panfilio is amazing on the audio. She just, if you were reading along, you would never be able to capture this and convey it realistically like she does. Oh, it's so good. It is the story of a woman and she finds herself pregnant from a one-night stand, and so that's the beginning of the story, and then it picks up 7 or 8 years later. I think it's 7 years later because her young daughter is just starting school. She's been in kindergarten, so she's about to start 1st grade. And the mom had this promising career at a publishing company that did a magazine. And so she was kind of up and coming there. And then when she got pregnant, she couldn't the hours were too long and she knew it was never going to work. And so she's been living hand to mouth with her daughter. The guy who was involved, the dad, is out of the picture completely. He tells her, I can't do this. I'm engaged. I have a life. You're on your own. So he is out of the picture for the entire time. And so she moves into this little lake house on the advice of a friend, and it's a bunch of little cottages. They're all sat on a lake, and it's in a vacation community in New York. So all the rich people come in the summer and then they all leave and the regular people get to stay behind. And she is a waitress in a local restaurant and studying to be a real estate agent because she feels like that's one thing where she could make her own hours, she could make a decent amount of money and support she and her young daughter. Well, her young daughter is just, I don't even have words. She's redheaded, she has blue glasses, She is always muddy, always into something. She has a pair of glittery cowboy boots that light up. So she's always coming out onto the porch and stamping her feet, and they light up. And she's just, oh my goodness. And so they move in next door to this guy who doesn't want anything to do with anyone. He is a guy who has his issues, which I won't tell you about because that's part of the charm of the book. But this little girl comes over next door, and the interaction between these two characters, this guy and this little girl, is, oh my gosh, it's priceless. And the way Christina Panfilio conveys that is, oh, you know what? Best romance. Best romance. I just, you know, I need to read some more of Julia London, because if the other stuff she's written is this good, then, you know, I'm in. I'm convinced. The other two books in this series are okay, but they're not as good as this one. So yeah, I need to check more of her stuff out. I'm not a fan of historical romance. I kind of went through a phase with that in high school, and then I got over it, and now I'm not, I don't know. It's not my thing, but I'd love more of this. So I picked up that. And then I picked up November 9 by Colleen Hoover, and that is narrated by Angela Goethals and Zachary Weber. And I'd read it before, obviously, gave it 5 stars. The other one, duh. I also gave Suddenly Engaged 5 stars again. Well, November 9 is one of Colleen Hoover's more recent books. It's about, I don't know, probably 3 books ago. And it's good. It's a really, really good book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. It's a book about an aspiring author and a girl who has been, she was like a child actress. And when I say child, I mean like 15-year-old actress. And she had a show and she got famous, and then she was in a fire at her dad's house and very badly scarred. And so while she feels like acting is a passion of hers, she really can't do it anymore because they moved on, replaced her in the show, and then the show got canceled. And so her dad is a famous actor, and one day she's sitting having lunch with him, and he's such a jerk, like full of himself, total jerk. And he's saying, so you're gonna move to New York, because she's leaving that day to go to New York to live. And they're in LA. And she says, yeah, I'm going, and I'm hoping to audition for Broadway. And he's like, honey, nah, you're never going to make it. And it's so disheartening because he's such a jerk about it. He's like, you know, this business is tough and you just can't cut it anymore. Well, there's a boy sitting in the next booth over, and he overhears this. And all of a sudden he comes and sits down and says, puts his arm around her and says, hey, babe, sorry I'm late. You know, LA traffic, what are you going to do? And she's like, who is this guy? And so he just whispers, just go with it. So he becomes her fake boyfriend, and they then decide that they need some time to mature. They're only 18. And so she says, let's meet. Well, he says, let's meet on this day, November 9, every year for the next 5 years. And we'll just see where it takes us. You know, we'll see what kind of people we are at the end, and you know, we'll just take it as it comes. And so it's the story told in, actually it's 6 days, but it's on November 9, and it's told on that day, every chapter, every year. And it's just so good. It's so good. You get both points of view, so you know what's going on. It's an incredible, wonderful love story of 2 soulmates figuring out that that's what they are. And of course, Colleen Hoover throws her, you know, her standard plot twist in near the end, and you're just like, what? Didn't see that coming. But, you know, I got to the end of it, and I thought, I'm so glad I listened to this again, especially because it was right before we did the live show for her latest book, which is All Your Perfects. And we talked about that. Great live show, by the way. Oh, I had a blast, and we just had such a great discussion going. And so, you know, it was just nice to have a good dose and a half of Colleen Hoover. So I love that. Kept my 5-star rating. I would do it again. You know, that's a book that I will probably reread again. And then I picked up Worth the Risk, and that's by Bromberg, narrated by Grace Grant and Zachary Weber. And, you know, the narration was fantastic. Zach Weber is always good. I always enjoy him. And my only complaint is that there wasn't enough of the guy's point of view for Zach to voice. So I didn't get as much Zach as I wanted, but it was still good. Grace Grant has a wonderful talent in terms of narration. She does it all very, very well. She's got a very distinct voice, and it's very pleasing to at least my ear. I really like her voice. And she just did everything wonderfully. My only complaint is that I don't think that she was the perfect voice for this particular character. I think sometimes that's true, and I say that occasionally. You know, it's not always a good match. You know, the voice, even though the voice actor is really good, it's not always a good matchup when you have a character that just doesn't sound in your head like Grace Grant sounds or whoever it is sounds. And in this case, I don't know. I think it's a personal thing with me. I think a lot of people wouldn't even think twice about it and would thoroughly enjoy her narration. And yet the character was, I don't know, not quite as spunky as I think Grace Grant's natural voice conveys. She reminds me, in terms of being a narrator, she reminds me a lot of Emma Galvin, who has a great voice. Again, great voice actor, but her voice isn't perfect for every character. That's probably true of every voice actor, but you know. So anyway, high marks on the narration, and the book was okay. I mean, it was a decent romance. I would recommend it. I think it was that good. I gave it 3 stars. You know, that's my standard thing. You know, unless you blow me completely out of the water with something like November 9 or Suddenly Engaged, then you're probably going to get between a 3 and a 4-star rating. It's probably 3.5. It's about a girl who is the daughter of a big publishing magnate, and he has several magazines, and she wants to be the chief editor of a fashion magazine that they own. It was funny because it was called Oat. She kept, Grace Grant kept calling it Oat, and I had to think about that, and I thought, Oat, O-A-T. Oh, wait a minute, it's a fashion magazine. So it was probably spelled H-A-U-T, like haute couture. Yeah. Anyway, so once I figured that out, I felt much smarter. She's an up-and-coming writer, editor kind of person, and her dad says, you are a child of privilege. You know, you've grown up wealthy. And I think maybe you need to kind of cut your chops on something a little more realistic, a little more down to earth. And so he sends her off to the town where she grew up to be an assistant editor of a family magazine. And she comes up with the idea that they're going to choose the hottest dad in America and put him on the cover. Well, there's an old friend of hers that she did not treat very well when she was in high school, and he's one of the contestants. And he's got his own issues. He has a young son, and so it's a hate to love relationship. And you know, the thing I liked about this story was that they were very honest with each other. They had a lot of angst going on, a lot of conflict between them. And it was kind of funny because I think normally you feel like things are going to go one way, and when they don't, they kind of curve around and they get there, but they don't do exactly what you expect. This book did that, but that just makes it interesting. So that was last week. Yeah, not much going on in terms of anything else, but just a whole lot of romance and a whole lot of fabulous romance because of those 2 rereads. Right now, I am listening to 2 things. One is The Playboy Bachelor by Rachel Van Dyken, and it's narrated from 2 points of view by these people on the screen that I can't remember right off the top of my head. And the other thing is Imposter Syndrome. This is by Mishell Baker, and it's narrated by Arden Hammersmith. And I'll tell you what, if you want to have a character match up perfectly with a voice actor, this is perfect. Arden Hammersmith is the exact perfect voice for this main character. This is book 3 in the Arcadia project, which is kind of an, I guess you'd call it an urban fantasy. It has to do with a main character who tried to commit suicide. She has borderline personality disorder. And when she did, she jumped off a building, and then she ended up with injuries requiring the amputation of both her legs. So I think she has them like they were amputated below the knee. So she has prosthetics, and she's just a really interesting person. And so there are affiliations with the Fae and the Fae court and the Fae world, and there are doors, and I don't know, this isn't your standard thing like that. I really appreciate the way it's written because I think I love this main character. And I didn't realize this was out, or I would have read it sooner probably, but so that's kind of fun. I am going to do a buddy read of another book that has come out, a new Jamie McGuire book. I think it's called From Here to You. And I forget who that's narrated to by also, but these people. And yeah, that's it for this week. Coming ahead. I don't know what else I'll pick up. I'm sure a bunch of stuff, but hopefully a little romance, a little sci-fi, a little post-apocalyptic. I don't know. You know, I'm kind of almost done with romance, I think. I don't know. For a little while. I don't know. I always say that and then I pick up another one. So anyway, if you've read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts. So have a great weekend. And that's it for now for me. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.